Fine. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy, do you need to take any type of role or anything like that?
Well, yeah, let's go ahead, being we're in a webinar, we'll follow our normal board practice. Ms. Cavanis?
Here.
Mr. Journey?
Here.
Ms. Harris? Here. And Mr. Anderson?
Here.
All present.
And is there anybody else on the line for public comment?
There is no public comment at this time.
Okay, with that, we'll move to the approval of the July 7th meeting minutes, or any discussion or motion on those minutes.
Move to approve.
A second?
Okay. Are there any opposed to approving these minutes? Then I think we can forego the roll call.
Great. So with that, Ashley, can we turn it over to you and
Yeah, no
your
problem.
presentation?
I can share my screen.
Or we do have it here, actually, if you need either way.
Okay, well, I did update it this morning. Surprise, I'm here to present. I'm 14 days away from my due date, so I wasn't sure.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, so I had my other partner who's going to help, wrap up everything on standby. And so I said, well, I'm still here and I'm working till Friday, so I can, make sure I complete the presentation and answer any of your questions. So I'm here today, and who's joining me is Rage Sullivan. He was our audit senior for this year, so just including him on the presentation. So I prepared this presentation just to give you a little bit of a summary of what we kind of went over, our scope of services, as well as the final reports. I know the reports can be wordy, and so we like to kind of highlight an overview of what the highlights are of the reports so you can see the big picture. So I kind of just mentioned what we'll go over. And so I just kind of like to reiterate what our scope of services are. We are contracted with the audit committee and the board directly, and we work with management through day-to-day throughout the audit. And so ultimately, our main purpose is to audit the financial statements. So I usually like to just provide a summary. These are your financial statements, which you prepare each year. You represent and assert that the financial information contained therein is fairly presented in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. And our responsibility as the independent audit organization is to conduct an audit engagement in accordance to our professional standards, render written opinions as to whether your assertions and representations are in fact accurate. And we follow two standards, not only the AICPA standards for generally accepted auditing standards, but also government auditing standards, often referred to as Yellow Book. And so these standards require training as we go through the test of details to perform in relation to your financial statements and internal control over financial reporting. So with all that said, ultimately we'll have our independent auditors report on the financial statement, and then our communication with the audit committee and board of retirement. That's what our SAS 114 letter is. And then the report on internal control over financial reporting. That's required with government auditing standards. And then an agreed upon conditions report, just basically going over like any efficiencies or improvements in controls that we noted that don't rise to a level of significance that would be required to be reported in your internal control report over financial reporting. So we call that the management letter. So we did meet in July that you just approved the minutes and kind of went over the scope of services. So we did come on site this year for field work in September. We performed our test of controls, walkthroughs, and the key accounting areas and understanding of those. And I'll go over those in a little bit in a couple slides. We reviewed the minutes and agreements and basically substantiated all account balances that are on your financial statements. And we did that in reviewing the confirmation responses we received. Worked on the draft that you're seeing today. And so that was October and November. And with your guys' approval and review today, if there's no changes, we expect to issue those by November 23rd. And so just to highlight kind of our audit areas of focus, I went over these previously. Significant risk areas are revenue recognition, and we perform tested controls over contributions and income and receive our confirmations from the third parties, the employers, investment managers, and custodian to ensure that the reporting of the financial statements is accurate. We do perform substantive analytics, so that's kind of in relation to changes that have happened over the year, expectations that we expect to see on the financial statements. Another area is on management override of controls. Just the basic understanding of your journal entry process. So we sampled journal entries that were performed. And then through our walkthroughs, we reviewed the process of segregation of duties and review just to ensure that there's no unusual activity or no significant changes in the review process. And so I'm going to go over next kind of the audit areas that we covered of those areas. So the significant audit areas are, of course, investments and related earnings. That's one of your largest amounts on your financial statements. So as I mentioned, each of these audit areas, we perform a walkthrough and understanding of your segregation of duties and controls. And we do the analytics on investment income. And we kind of perform a three-way reconciliation, you would say, of the confirmations, reviewing what was reported by your custodian, your consultant, your investment managers, and what's actually in your GL. So we take a look at all of those sources of documents to ensure that the most current and up-to-date information is being used as of June 30, 2022. We also review your GASB 72 valuation inputs and leveling determinations for your note disclosures and obtain your audited financial statements and SOC reports. So SOC reports is your service organization control reports. We review those just to ensure that if there are any specific changes in procedures or controls that maybe are not working properly at that investment manager, that would be a concern to you in regards to if they're properly reporting information to you. And then for employer and employee contributions, we did, test contributions over that process, ensuring that the rates that were approved by you were being used for the correct members, and then performing analytic procedures in regards to, what the changes in member counts, what the expectation is, if there's been an increase in the contribution rates or salaries. So we'll do some variance analysis in that way. And our participant data, as I mentioned, we do test the active members, terminated members, and employer payroll. So again, we kind of do a three-way reconciliation, you would say, of your active member information. We take a look at what's in your system, what is the employer reporting, and what is getting communicated to your actuary, making sure that the information is being reported the same to the different parties. So we send a confirmation directly to your employers, asking them to provide pay stubs so we can recalculate the pensionable salary to ensure that They're including what has been approved by you guys on what is allowable, and that's what's being used in the system, and recalculating the contribution rates that are being used. And then we also will review your GASB 67 report, your money weighted return, and the RSI is the required supplementary information that's reported in your financial statements. Most of the time, all of the pension liability and net pension liability is reported in your required supplementary information and in your notes, but it's not reflected in your financial statements. And that's basically because it's the employer's liability. So we make sure that that information is appropriately disclosed. And in regards to benefit payments, we do the walkthroughs and testing of the benefit payments. I do have a slide in here about the VCP testing that we went over and during our July meeting. So I will be going over more in detail of what we tested over there. And we perform analytics in regards to cost of living, approved rates that are being recalculated, as well as the change in members. So this is the slide I was referring to. So I just wanted to kind of have a follow-up about what was requested from our scope of services meeting. And so we had received direction that you wanted us to test 15 new retirees, 15 old retirees, and 15 retirees who had corrections related to your historical benefit project, IRS voluntary correction program, which is your VCP members. And so of the 45 members that we tested, we noted, in relation to VC members selected, we ended up randomly selecting 20 members, which were noted as VCP corrections. And so I kind of included the range. So from the 20 members, general tiers 1, 3, and 5, and safety tier 2 were selected. 2 of the 20 members were actually beneficiaries, and the oldest member tested was in 1994. And so through our review, we noted no concerns of the calculation of benefits and cost of living adjustments that were calculated when we were reviewing and recalculating the VCP members. Do you guys have any specific questions related to this testing that we did do upon your request?
Dan?
So Ashley, I know we settled on this at our last meeting, but do you feel that this was just statistically significant sampling?
Yeah, so I think it's a good representative sample of all of the members that you did have your changes to that were specifically related to retirees, as this was what was focused on the benefit payment side. I think, it had a good coverage of the different tiers, and even, some of your beneficiaries just from a high level, just to give you guys, the board, some support that someone else has looked at, these items.
Any other committee members? Okay, Ashley?
Okay, so now I'm going to go over the results of the audit. So within your packet, you had a separate report on the financial statements. I did want to highlight that there were changes to this report. So if you were looking at last year's report, the changes are more structure related, as well as just adding clarification. We did not, significantly change any procedures from the prior year. It's more adding more clarity for the users. So now you would see the audit opinion as the first paragraph, and then the second paragraph is the basis of opinion, where that was usually at the end of the report. So ultimately, there's extra clarification in regards to management's responsibilities and the auditor's responsibilities. So it went from a 2-page report to now a 3-page report. And ultimately, with all the changes, it is the same report as the prior year, an unmodified clean opinion that has been obtained, which is the highest opinion that you can receive as an organization. So that's basically stating that there were no exceptions or modifications or qualified opinions in relation to the report covering the financial statements. And then the next
Actually-
report. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
I had a question for you on the areas that management is responsible for. I know we submit the whole document to GFOA and they review it. Are they just looking for the structure of the audit report, or on those areas that you don't audit, do they do any testing or verification of those areas?
Yeah, so ultimately, when the report that you are seeing today is just basically like the financial section of what the GFOA sees. Later, once Robert has prepared the ACFR, which gets submitted to the GFOA, we will review those other sections. So our audit opinion mainly does cover this financial section. So it has your basic financial sections, and then the required supplementary information and the other supplementary information is kind of in relation to the opinion. So it's saying that we don't specifically audit all the areas, but we review them in relation to the financial statement. So literally we're tracing out all the numbers that are being reported in your required supplementary information to the actuarial valuations, making sure that the actuarial valuations are including the appropriate numbers that are presented in your financial statements, and that like your supplementary information, investment management fees and admin expenses, all of that directly ties into the financial statements. So the other sections that are presented in the ACFR is the introductory, which is kind of a summary similar to the management discussion and analysis that's included in this report. And then you have your actuary section, investment section, and statistical section. So once we get that report from Robert, we will go through the GFOA checklist just to ensure that everything is included. It meets the requirements of the GFOA award. We've already reviewed the comments from last year, which were minimal, and then making sure that those have been corrected. But we do read through the document, ensure that the information is in line with this document, which is basically like the financial section.
Great, thank you.
So the next report is going to be within your board reports. And so I created this kind of summary. It's over the required communication, as I mentioned, because we do work with management on a day-to-day basis. If anything came up through the audit process, it's basically here to report to the audit committee and the board, kind of disclosing, what happened during the audit. So currently, I'm going to just kind of go over throughout the letter. It talks about the new accounting standards. If there were any new ones adopted or accounting policy changes, it would be disclosed in this letter, and there were none for the current year that had an impact on the financial statements. The significant estimates and sensitive disclosures reviewed usually are your fair value of investments, your contributions and net pension liability estimates, because they're based on the actuarial assumptions. And so you'll see a couple paragraphs talking about those and what note disclosures are discussed. If there were any corrected or uncorrected misstatements in the financial statements, then we would communicate those here if they rise to a level of significance. Currently, we did not have any misstatements as a result of our audit procedures that we need to communicate to you. If there were any disagreements with management, we would disclose those in this report, and there were none. If there were any other significant audit findings or issues, it would be in this report, and there are none. And then, as I just explained, this letter does disclose the limited procedures over the required supplementary and the in relation opinion to the other supplementary, and that we weren't engaged to report on those other sections in the ACFR, but we do review them once the ACFR is available. And so the next report in the separate report to the board is over your report on internal control over financial reporting. And so this report does cover any non-compliance or material weaknesses. If there were any, there was one significant deficiency that was identified from the prior year. And so we just rolled forward that finding and management's response for the current year. So you can see that basically was over the journal entries and manual calculations related to financial reporting. And you can see in management's response that they're in the process of, they had some turnover and hiring of additional members. So they plan to implement the review and remaining journal entries over benefit payments and benefit setup by the end of the fiscal year 2023. So that's the current year management response. Do you guys have any questions or anything about this prior year recommendation that's been rolled forward?
Actually, just one question, because the journal entry has come up, twice in the presentation. Is it journal entries in general, given that that there's manual calculations done, or is there a particular journal entry that MCERA does that was of some concern or to you?
So usually we look at the overall controls of all journal entries, not specifically if they're manual or if it's produced from your pension system and then booked. Ultimately, a good oversight and control is to have a second person reviewing them, someone that is familiar with that procedure or process. With the small staff that you guys have at Mendocino, that's where it gets kind of hard to ensure that people are cross-trained, or if you have someone, that does leave, it leaves open a gap of that review process. So it's more just, best recommended procedures. There wasn't one specific type of journal entry that is of more concern than another. We just like to see that across the board, that there is always a second review.
Could I add a comment there, Jim? This finding did roll forward simply because we were a little slower than expected in being able to roll out review of the different journal entries that Robert books. But we have developed procedures for that both Judy and I review different journal entries that are being processed monthly. So that's why it showed up again, is we had not fully gotten the processes completely rolled out, but we do have those processes in place now.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next report is going to be your agreed upon conditions report. So this is where we look at what processes or improvements that can be made to increase efficiency or internal controls of financial reporting, so they don't rise to a level of concern like the significant deficiency that we just talked about in relation to journal entries. But this one specifically was around your IT controls, password requirements within Pension Gold. So it's not that we think something's going to happen, it's just more preventative, looking at what controls you guys do have. So this one as well was rolled forward from the prior year and is expected to be implemented by December 2022, basically covering user passwords that, requirements for the member direct portal.
Yeah, so we are rolling out two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication to the member direct portal. We may also be looking at modifying some of our password requirements for our client desktop application that staff uses, but this focus right now is the two-factor authentication being rolled out in member direct. That should happen probably know during the first quarter of 2023. Originally, it was targeted for the end of this year, but with the tax release taking us a little longer to test and get in place, that pushed out the two-factor authentication to early next year.
Thank you, Doris.
Thank you, Ashley.
So ultimately, I just want to go over kind of our financial statement review process. Ultimately, we have a admin in-house that does have an English degree. I'm focused on accounting and the numbers. So we do have someone read through the report, ensure grammar and continuation of consistency is throughout the report. And then me and Rage do our engagement team review, just ensuring that all of the note disclosures are tied out to the financial statements and things are done in accordance with requirements. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do assist in the giveaway review once the ACFR is available. But we do have a quality control review that is performed in-house, and that's required by our standards. So I have a separate independent partner, Lindsay Zimmerman, who does the quality control review. And basically, she comes in with having no, relation to the audit and takes a look at all of our procedures, ensuring that we have performed our audit procedures in compliance with our standards, as well as taking a look at your financial statements and ensuring everything is being reported correctly. So that's kind of the extent and detail of our financial statement review process. With that, that's everything that I wanted to present. And there's 5 more minutes before Doris wants to leave. So if you have any other questions, or if Robert wants to highlight anything on the financial statements, we'll be happy to address anything.
Thank you, Ashley and Rage. I was going to ask Doris and Robert the same thing, if there was anything from staff that you wanted to additionally provide for the committee.
I didn't have anything additional to provide to the committee. Overall, I think the process went very smoothly, and I appreciate Brown Armstrong's team, Rage, and Ashley's assistance with everything this year. Honestly, I had almost no questions from Brown Armstrong. They really dealt with Judy and Robert primarily with their staff contacts, and from my perspective, it went very, very well. And with that, I will leave you in their hands because I have to go get on a meeting with the state about our lease, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, and bye.
Bye.
Yeah,
Robert or committee members?
well, so I'd like to pipe in real quick just to say thanks again. Doris did mention it, but it was kind of nice to see Brown back up here for a little while this year. So thank you again.
Committee members? Questions, comments?
Well, it's always reassuring to get a clean audit. And I do appreciate the sampling that you did of the corrected retirement plans, just to give us some level of assurance that there's nothing new that's being missed or discovered.
Yeah, and I want to thank Judy and Robert as well. We can't perform our audit without their help and compliance. I know sometimes it can be a headache when they have their day-to-day procedures to perform, but they're always very prompt in responding to any of our questions and very helpful. So we appreciate all of their efforts.
I guess at this point, we'd entertain a motion to accept the draft report as is and to forward it to the full board for discussion and action.
So moved.
Second,
Judy, can we do this by, how would you like to handle this motion?
I'll go ahead and take a roll call. So Catherine Kavanaugh,
I,
Jim Anderson,
Aye.
Dan Drury,
Aye.
and Geraldine Harris.
Aye.
Great.
Okay, the last thing we have is to schedule our next audit committee meeting. I'm assuming from Brown Armstrong, that's probably going to be, is that the kickoff meeting for next year's audit?
Yeah, it would be unless you guys had any other specific changes, or that you guys had to do internally.
How do the committee members feel about just leaving that date open until we begin the engagement process again next audit cycle?
Sounds good.
And I
Yeah.
do want to add that I believe our contract was going to, this was the last year that we were engaged to do the audit for June 30, 2022. So if there was any extensions of our contract that we needed to do, or if you guys were going to go out to RFP, then we would need to, do that as well.
Great.
Can I ask, because I'm new to the audit committee this year, how many years has your firm performed the audits?
Ooh,
6,
6 years?
6.
So with audit standards, every 6 years, there's an audit partner rotation that's required. And so this year was the first year that the partner rotation occurred. Obviously, that was involuntary on your guys' part, but more because Rosalba was retiring from being a partner and she transitioned to be our COO internally. So you did have a transition year this year with me as the new partner. And so that's required in government standards to be done every 6 years. So if you did want to, avoid the RFP process, we could do a proposal of an extension for however many years you guys did choose to. And basically, we had a whole new audit team this year that was basically on the team when we were doing the audit.
Catherine?
so an audit cycle is normally like 3 years, right? You focus on one specific area and, all of it, but a special emphasis on one area. And then after 3 years, you would start that process over again, right? Is that correct?
So every year, I audit each of the areas that were mentioned today because they are significant to your financial statements. When we do some rotation of controls, usually it's more just fraud controls, like going back and testing your AP purchase orders. So they're not significant to your process, but we do rotation on, testing if your investment manager fees are
Right.
being recalculated. So we do a rotation to some of those smaller areas that aren't significant to the audit from that perspective. So yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Ashley and Reg, we appreciate you presenting to the committee today and for all the work that you've done throughout the entire audit process.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So Jim, again, I'm new to the committee. I don't feel comfortable making a recommendation right at today's meeting about whether or not to extend the look about extending the contract. But I want to get a chance just to check in with staff first. But I don't think it's inherently a bad idea.
Judy, can we make note of that? I know it's not on the agenda for today. And I know
Right, we wouldn't be really discussing that or taking any action on that today. That's something that Doris will deal with the full board, when time comes.
so is the date, the natural kind of end date of the contract approaches, then Doris will bring that to the full board as a policy item?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Anything further?
Well, I'd like to wish Ashley good luck with her transition.
Thank
Is this your
you.
first? Ashley, is this your first?
Yes, that's my first. So I'm about 38 weeks today, and then I'll plan to be coming back the end of March. So hoping to take the full time to spend with the baby.
Oh,
For you.
wish
It's
you,
magical.
we wish you well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that, do we need a motion to adjourn, Judy, or just with all the business completed, is it, we just move into adjournment?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank our auditors and committee members and staff and everyone for their participation today. And with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting and have a happy Thanksgiving to all.
Wish you the same.
Thank
all.
you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
To everyone.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for joining our meeting today.
Thank you, everybody.